Today you get to sit in as I talk with two totally unrelated products in our ranching industry that I'm considering using on our ranch. The first one is GPS tags in livestock.
We want to keep it simple, so basically you can track your cattle anywhere in the continental U.S. with just an XT Pro tag and a cell phone.
That's Rob Paxson with 701X as he lays out how GPS tag technology works, how you would use it, who's using it, who controls the data, and of course we'll get into the cost. Then we'll hear about a product that's set to mitigate stress in livestock called FerAppease.
It's a pheromone that is produced and eliminated in the skin of the mammary gland of lactating mammals. It's exactly like an anxiety medication for people, but it's natural.
That's Dr. Rodrigo Bacayo, who explained what FerAppease is, how it works, and of course we'll get into dosage and cost. We're not endorsing these products, but if I have questions about them, I'll bet you do too. That's on this episode of the Working Ranch Radio Show. And welcome to the Working Ranch Radio Show. I'm Justin Mills, your host, and we're glad to have you joining us here on the program today. This is episode 165 for all of you that have been counting, and I'm pretty sure that's probably not very many because that's probably not as big of a deal to you, but it is a point of reference, and that is there are 164 other shows that we've done the last several years, and most, in fact, of those shows can be utilized pretty much any time. We really don't try to put too much dated material in the shows, knowing that at different times you might be having questions about different issues that we cover, and we try to cover it in such a way that could be listened to, maybe a show we did 2 years ago that you would find some value in here even today. So I kind of consider it an audio encyclopedia, if you want to picture it that way. And so if you want to go back, you can find our podcast website at workingranchradio.com or any podcast provider out there. If you subscribe to our podcast through a provider like Spotify or Apple or Pandora, a lot of the different ones, it'll automatically download that program so that you can listen to it when you get into Timbuktu country and you don't have any cell coverage. And that's how that works. So encourage you to check it out there. And also, it's helpful for us if you leave some comments, thumbs up, thumbs down if you need to, 5-star ratings, however you got to do that. That's always helpful as well, not only for us, but also other folks that are listening and going through and maybe wanting to listen to some shows that were popular or that a lot of other folks found value in as well. Well, on our show today, a little bit different. Yeah, we're going to be looking at a couple different products. We'll get into those in just a moment that I have questions about, so I thought that would be useful for you all to listen in on that conversation as well. Now, before we get there, I did want to remind you that later on in the show, the Captain Tim O'Byrne will be in for this week's edition of Tim's 2 Cents, and of course, meteorologist Don Day towards the tail end of the program today with a look at our long-term weather. So that's kind of how we'll go here for today. Now, before we get started with our first interview, I did want to point out that we here at Working Ranch Radio Show and here on the X-Ring Ranch, we are not getting paid to do these interviews with these two particular products here today. This is just purely something that I have questions about. And so there's no side hustle here. And I just say that mainly because I know when I search for product reviews online, the last place I look is something that is being sponsored by somebody. And so that's not the case here. Now, later down the road, you might hear advertisements for these particular companies. Who knows? That's not for me to determine, but that does not mean I am getting paid for it as where we're sitting at here today. And I want to be very, very clear before we get going. This is purely just for informational and educational purposes, and so that you know there's not a biased skew towards any of this. So as we look at our first product here today, it's about GPS tracking ear tags in cattle, and I'm looking at it specifically for putting it potentially in my bulls. So joining us here today is Rob Paxson, who is with 701X. 701X is based out of Fargo, North Dakota, but Rob, you are based out of South Central Kansas. Appreciate you joining us here today on the Working Ranch Radio Show.
Hey, thanks for having us, Justin. We really appreciate the opportunity.
You bet. Well, Rob, as you and I were talking a little bit before we went on air, the term precision agriculture is something I'm sure many of us have heard. It's definitely been around in the farming industry for many, many years. As we know, a lot of them anymore use a lot of GPS technology when it comes to being very precise with what they're doing on their farming operations. We're now starting to see more and more of it being used, and it continues to expand each and every year in the livestock industry. And your product, 701X, and the GPS tracking that we're seeing really embraces that GPS technology in the products that you're having and that we're going to be talking about here today.
Oh, absolutely, Justin. You know, the farm guys and the dairy guys have been ahead of us for years with technology as far as production goes. And we in the livestock industry are finally just starting to get caught up. And it's not because of the technology necessarily, because that's been available for quite a while. It's how do you package that and put it in an animal that you're going to turn out on range, that's going to deal with the elements, the hot, the cold, the wet, the dry, the banging around, that sort of thing, and make it last and make it work. And we finally think that we've got a really good bead on that. And our V6 version of our XT Pro Tag has shown outstanding results so far in testing and the tags that we've got out. So we're really happy about that.
Rob, let's just start at a real high elevation concept of what we're doing. We'll get into the details because, as I said before, this is something I've kind of thrown around for my own operation in terms of maybe it's something I can track my bulls, make sure for two reasons. One, from the standpoint of are they in the right pasture? And then the second part, are they breeding? Are they getting the work done? So from a very, maybe 60,000 feet level, let's talk about the product and what it's doing.
So the XT Pro Tag is our GPS tag, Justin, and it will currently send 5 different notifications directly to your phone based off of animals' behavior, the speed of the animal, health alerts, breeding and production alerts, because we all know that there's 10,000 things that you have to do on the ranch every day. And you can't just sit there and babysit those cattle, 24/7. You got other things that demand your time and your effort. And it seems like those things slip through the cracks. So basically our mission is to be able to make producers more efficient and more profitable by allowing them to go ahead and do other things, while basically our technology is taking care of those things that on a day-to-day basis, you might get past you because you're busy doing other things. Mm-hmm. So as well as tracking and letting you know where the animals are, we want you to know, about their welfare. We want you to know about their health. We want you to know about all these things so that you can continue your day-to-day operation with everything else that's going on and not have to necessarily be concerned about watching that every minute.
Mm-hmm. Real quick, just a side note, because when we start talking about a conversation of tracking animals and data, who's control of that data?
That data is your data, Justin. We are a cloud-based technology. So all of your information, all of your data that you put into the software and the tracking of your animals and so forth, that all belongs to you. Mm-hmm. You have control over that. We don't sell it to anybody. We don't give it to anybody. That is specifically your ranch and your company's information.
Okay.
Now, if there is a problem, let's say you have a device that goes down or something that goes wrong, and we need to retrieve your data and get it to a new device or something like that, we certainly have the accessibility and the ability to do that so that your data is not lost. But as far as sharing that with anybody or going anywhere other than your company or in our data bank, that's it.
Okay. All right. So you had talked a bit ago about the welfare and the health of these animals. And I know there's an app. It's kind of a standalone part to what the GPS tags and some of that, but it works in conjunction with your tags and the other products there. Quickly talk about that app, the standalone app element that's part of this as well, that could be utilized if you want to use it.
Sure, you bet. So the 701X app is our software package. And while our hardware and our GPS tags and our XT light tags and all that sort of stuff is kind of the glittery, shiny thing over here, mm-hmm. the one thing that really makes the whole ecosystem work and really drives it is that software package. Now, don't get me wrong. There are several different livestock software platforms available. But what we've seen and what most of our customers are telling us is these platforms tend to be fairly rigid and they tend to be fairly cookie cutter. The nice thing about the 701X app is it's very flexible. It's very easy to navigate. It's very easy to customize it to your operation. And it allows you to do things that maybe some of the others don't. And you can have our app if you're just looking for record keeping capability without having the hardware. But if you have the hardware, you must have the app because that's what the hardware communicates with.
Okay. All right. Well, that makes sense. So the app, as you said, it can be a standalone cattle management software program if you want to use it that way. However, if you want to utilize the GPS products that are with 701X, you would need to use the app to go with those. So that would make sense on that. Okay, let's take a break here, Rob. When we come back, we're going to get into some of the specific products themselves. So I want you to talk a little bit about the tags. We're also going to get into what kind of operations are using them, as well as cost. We'll get into that when we come back here on the Working Ranch Radio Show.
What if your commercial beef herd could be better than you thought possible? Genetic testing can help give you more confidence about what your herd is made of, and more importantly, what it can be. Inherit Select from Zoetis provides data-driven genetic insights to help you make more informed selection, breeding, and culling decisions about your cows and heifers. The journey from genetic potential to reality begins with Inherit Select. Ask a genetics rep how to save on testing with our whole herd promotion. Go to beefgenetics.com/radio.
Welcome back to the Working Ranch Radio Show. A little bit different type of a program this week as we're looking at a couple different products that I have questions about for my own ranching operations, potentially using them in our environment that we use here. And I just thought, shoot, it'd be something that probably you all would benefit to hear as well. So that's kind of what we're doing here on today's program. If you joined us in the first segment where we were talking with Rob Paxson, who is with 701X. 701X is based out of Fargo, North Dakota. Now, he's out of South Central Kansas. And Rob, we kind of got a basis of really what the product and the technology is doing. Let's now get into the tags. I want you to talk through some of the products. I know there's different types of tags. You've hit on that already a little bit, and some of the other things. Let's get into that.
Okay, so our XT Pro tag is our GPS tracking tag. This is the one that has all the whistles and bells, the notifications, the alerts, the monitoring of activity and different things like that. The XT Lite tag is an RFID tag and has Bluetooth capability. So in a sense, what we're saying is the XT Lite can communicate with the XT Pro tag or with an X Watson remote water sensor or any other Bluetooth device when they're in the area. So basically, one XT Pro tag will support 10 XT Lite tags. Oh. So when you go to our marketplace and you order an XT Pro tag, you can order 1 to 10,000 or however many you want. But when you order the Lite tags, they come in clusters of 10 because that is designed to communicate with that Pro tag. So instead of putting Pro tags on all the animals, you can put your Pro tags on your bulls, maybe your heifers, some of your lead cows, and then put XT Lite tags in other animals and still keep kind of track of the whole basic herd's location and what's going on.
Who are you finding that's using this? I mean, who's your user database and what's the demographics? What's their operations look like?
So that's a really good question, Justin, and I get this all the time, and I kind of have a generic answer for that. You know, contrary to what you may have heard, size does not matter. Okay. We've got large commercial operations that are using our technology. We got very small family herds where guys may have another job in town, have a few cows at home back out on the ranch, and they're just using their town job to support their hobby. Seed stock producers, it's a huge advantage for them, particularly from the bull performance standpoint and things like that. You know, we've talked to some repro physiologists that are telling us that they are of the opinion that 1 in every 8 bulls does not mount. So we're seeing a libido problem in our male reproductive animals. And so my question for them is, what do you attribute that to? And they really tell us that, they think, they don't know, they haven't conducted the trial yet, but they're in the process of doing so. But they really think that insemination, ET work, and carcass has taken a lot of maternal instinct out of these animals and causing that number to be so high of the bulls that won't mount. So for instance, if you go to a sale and you buy a high dollar bull, you take him down to your local vet, you get him tested, man, he's great. Everything looks good in the microscope. You turn him out and at preg time, you've got open cows. Well, what in the world happened? Well, he's standing down there in the pond or over under the trees, or he's taking 12 cows off away from the other bulls that would mount. And as they're coming into heat, they're not being serviced, and you've missed that opportunity. So now you're another heat cycle back.
Yeah.
So that's one of the advantages to the Pro Tag. We can let you know that all this is going on literally at the palm of your hand while you're taking care of other things on the ranching operation, and you can make those management decisions and those changes as needed to keep you profitable. And, one or two more bred cows at preg time is huge in this market.
Yeah. So, Rob, my question is, I can see where smaller operations or seed stock are finding the value in this. Let's talk about a range outfit that's maybe running 3,000-5,000 head of cows. What are you seeing those guys? How are they using this?
So basically what we're telling everybody, Justin, right now is at least start with your bulls. This is your most expensive animal. If there's going to be a problem, it's probably going to be with a bull. Okay. So let's at least get them covered. Let's monitor their health and their production and make sure that we're doing the right thing there, because, that is a very large part of your whole breeding program. Some people will argue that it's greater than the cow side. Some people argue the cow side's greater, but either way, you can't do anything without both of them. So let's take care of that problem. Then my recommendation to guys is, we're going to have some other features available in that Pro Tag, hopefully by the middle of this summer, or hopefully at least by the end of this year. That's going to be very beneficial to your cow side, which comes in form of estrus detection and calving.
Okay.
So maybe put some in your first calf heifers. If you're saving heifers or you're buying replacements, let's get those animals tagged so you kind of know what's going on, because they're, again, your younger, more expensive animals that, the 5-year-old cow that's been around and done her job and everything, you're not as concerned about her. And then the third year, maybe put some in some of those younger running age cows, and eventually you build up to where you can get the whole herd tagged and everything's going like it should be, and not have to swallow that pill all at once.
Okay. All right. Well, I could see where that would make sense. Okay. So we got to get to this question. So what are we looking at for costs on this? Because like I said, I've kind of preliminary looked at some things and I thought, oh man, I can't afford to do this, full blown deal. The bull thing potentially, but let's talk about cost for my operation. I've got, 17 bulls I'm going to be putting out with cows this year. Let's kind of work through my costs a little bit here.
Okay, so if you just wanted to tag your bulls, you're looking at $125 a head for the XT Pro Tag and the first year's worth of data plan for the tag. Okay. Then you would be looking at the software package or subscription for those animals as well. So 17 animals on the software is probably going to cost you something like a little over $100 a year. Okay, so one subscription, unlimited users. So no matter how many people there are in your operation or how many are helping or, involved in it, you can have one subscription and you can share that with those other folks that are in your operation, and you can control who can see what in the software based on the level of their, involvement in the operation.
Okay. So let's talk setup. How's this going to look? What kind of equipment? What am I looking at there?
So basically, any smartphone, tablet, desktop, we're friendly with all devices. So basically, if you have that hardware that you're using now, a smartphone of any kind, whether it's Android or Apple or, whatever it may be, your tablet or your desktop in the office, you can put the app and the software literally on any of those devices. So it's simply a matter of signing up for the subscription and entering the number of animals that you're wanting to keep track of, whether whether you want your whole herd on the software, and then you just want to monitor the ones, your bulls that you're putting the tags in, that's fine. Or you can set it up for just the animals that you have tags in and not the rest. But to me, I've always kind of had that philosophy. You can't manage what you can't measure. So your best bet is to have everything on there so you can keep track of what's going on with the whole herd, whether you can track them GPSly or not, or, whether you're using all the alerts and notifications or not. Mm-hmm. That subscription, that's totally up to you and your operation and how much you want to put in there. We recommend that you put in, however many cows you have, plus you plan for a calf for each of those animals and your bulls. So total herd is what would be ideal in the software.
Okay. The base, real quick, explain the setup on that, if that's needed, where that's needed, how that's used.
Okay, so there is some confusion over that. I do get a lot of questions from customers out in the country. So the base is not required for the tags and the software to work. The base is basically nothing but a remote water sensor.
Okay? Oh, okay.
So that the X Watson would be the base that you would mount either at your windmill or your solar well or somewhere out in a remote, watering station, and put the sensor in the tank, and that would tell you or send to your phone the water level, the water temperature, and then you can set a minimum water level on the X Watson to where if the water goes below that, you get a notification. So you do know that there's actually something physically wrong with the well or the windmill, that it's not working, and you do need to go give it attention.
Okay. That's good. I appreciate that clarification there, because I was going to ask you, just as a side note before we finished our conversation here today, about the remote water level and the temps deal that you have there, because I knew that was a side thing to the tag deals, but I appreciate that clarification on the use of that and where that's tied in with the base on that. Well, Rob, was there anything we left out? Any questions that I didn't ask that you normally get asked from producers?
Oh, a lot of them, Justin, but you have to go through several shows to get all that done for sure. The thing is we want to keep it simple. So basically you can track your cattle anywhere in the continental U.S. with just an XT Pro tag and a cell phone. Okay. So no antennas, no bases, none of that required, just your phone and the tag. There is a minimal amount of cellular signal that does need to be available, but it's not a huge amount. Less than it takes to send a text message. So in most places it will work. We do understand that there are places where there is no signal, period. We recommend that guys, get a couple of tags, try them. If they check in, fine, we're good to go. If they don't, send them back to us. You don't own them.
Okay. All right. Well, Rob, I appreciate the conversation here today. If folks are interested, what's the direction they need to head to? I know there's a website. Is there any other information they need to know?
www.701x.com is the website. There is a free 2-week trial on the software there at the website. You sign up for everything there. You order from there, gets shipped right to your door. We do have a very good customer support network in the office there at Fargo, with an 844 number that you can call the office, get a hold of one of our support guys in there, and they can certainly take care of any questions or needs that you may have there. Or you can call myself, and I would certainly be glad to help in any way I could as well.
All right. Well, Rob, thanks for joining us here today. I know there's other folks across the country probably have similar questions about GPS technology and its use in our livestock operations. And thanks for answering my questions here today on your products.
Hey, you're very welcome, Justin. Thanks for the platform. We really appreciate being able to visit with you and your listener base, and look forward to helping you out in the future.
You bet. All right. Appreciate it.
You bet.
And again, that was Rob Paxson with 701X joining us here today. He represents their outside sales force for 701X. The company is located out of Fargo, North Dakota. And I know there's other companies in our industry that also do this kind of technology. And by no means are we endorsing this product over the others. I think if anything, it's educational. It's a point to where you can start to build a knowledge base about what these products are, what they can do, do and how they can be implemented in your ranching operation if you so choose to use them. And that was really the purpose of this. I want to also be very clear that we're not getting any sort of a kickback. I'm not getting any sort of a kickback on this. It's just sharing my conversation from our ranching perspective, some things I'm looking at with you all, and I thought it would be valuable for you to listen in on this as well. Just a real quick thing. It's something I wrote down that he had mentioned about that they're looking at. It's going to be coming down with their XT Pro tags, the ability to track estrus cycle and also calving. I thought that was interesting to know. That's be very useful. One other side question that I did ask Rob, and that is, let's say you bought a tag and you put it in an animal and you wanted to move it to another animal. Can you do that? And he said, yeah, you can do that. So I just thought I'd throw that answer in there real quick as well. Well, stay with us. We're going to take a break here, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about the product FerAppease. If you haven't heard about it, well, it's kind of one of the buzzword products that we're hearing at a lot of the industry meetings across the country here the last year or so. It is a maternal bovine appeasing substance. It's an all-natural product. We're going to talk with Dr. Rodrigo Bacallo, who is the founder and developer of FerAppease, when we come back here on the Working Ranch Radio Show. And welcome back to the Working Ranch Radio Show. I'm Justin Mills as we head now and looking at our second product that I have questions about. I wanted to share that conversation with you. It's a product by the name of FerAppease. And when you look at the technical sheet on it, it's called a maternal bovine appeasing substance. Well, what is it and what does it do? Well, joining us here to talk about it today is Dr. Rodrigo Bacallo, DVM, who is the founder and developer of FerAppease. And Dr. Bacallo, thanks for joining us here today on the Working Ranch Radio Show.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Pleasure. Thanks.
Well, Dr. Bacallo, I think just to get started right off, as I said, the technical sheet on it says it's a maternal bovine appeasing substance. And for a lot of us, not really sure what that would mean. So explain what it is and what it does.
Yep. I'll try to make this as simple as possible. As a new technology, it's important for us to try to understand what it is and how it works, right? So FerAppease is a pheromone. A pheromone is not a hormone. First thing I need to tell people is a pheromone is not a hormone. A pheromone is simply a chemical that one animal produces and eliminates into the environment to send a message to another animal that will change its behavior and or its physiology. So the most well-known pheromones out there, they're reproductive pheromones, right? So when cows are in heat, they produce and eliminate estradiol metabolites, they're pheromones. The bulls will then, put their heads when they're urinating, and they will do the Fleeman reflex, which is they'll lift their heads up and flip their nostrils. Mm-hmm. What they're doing there, they're bringing those chemicals right against the organ in the nose that detects them. That organ is the pheromone detection organ of all animals. Every animal has a working pulmonasal organ except for humans. That's why FerAppease is completely safe and doesn't do a thing for humans. So reproductive pheromones is the one that everybody knows. FerAppease is a different type of pheromone. It's a pheromone that is produced and eliminated in the skin of the mammary gland of lactating mammals. And then when babies are nursing, they're constantly in contact with that chemical or those chemicals. Those chemicals are being sensed by that nose gland and is shooting a message to the brain that strengthens the link between the baby and the mother by creating a very comforting and appeasing, safe feeling that those calves are basically going to be in a mental status that they don't feel threatened, they don't feel afraid, they don't feel anxious. So that's the how the nature kind of figure out how to make that bond between the calf and the mother a very strong bond is by creating that chemical communication between the mother and the calf. Mm-hmm. All we've done is identify those chemicals and then make it synthetically. These chemicals exist in nature. They're produced by different vegetables and different seeds and different things. They exist as pure chemicals. There are 8 different chemicals that have to come together in a solution in order to replicate this appeasing substance perfectly. The way it works is it's almost magical. So that gland in the nose connects to the part of the brain that perceives the threats that animals are seeing, right? And that connection there is the key to the product. So when the animals are exposed to it, it will then shoot that message, that part of the brain, and that part of the brain kind of becomes oblivious to the threatening situations that is happening around them. It's exactly like an anxiety medication for people, but it's natural, it's naturally occurring, and it has a 14-day duration. So basically what happens is the animals are going to be exposed to the product, and they're going to be, after they're exposed, they're going to be calmer. Their stress producing axis is going to be canceled or blocked. They'll go to feed faster. They will go, they're basically all the deleterious, the bad things that happens when you perceive threat and become stressed is minimized with the use of FerAppease. That's basically how it works.
And you and I were talking before we started visiting here on air, just the fact of what a cow is in nature, a fight or flight type of an animal, or, and how they deal with threat. And so we're addressing that a little bit. As I told you, I said, I think a lot of folks can start to draw a correlation between what you were just talking about is creating that calmness in those cattle, because one of the things that happens every time we handle livestock, and we could be the best at handling livestock, and by far there's a lot of us that are probably not as good. You could be the best or the worst in handling livestock. At any point in time, you are creating some element of stress in those animals. We can go with the cow-calf producers with branding and preconditioning and weaning, or stockers and feeders on receiving cattle in or processing those cattle. At any point in time when there's handling, there's stress. This is a product that you're saying can help that situation.
Absolutely. So, like you said, animals, not all the animals that we eat, not only cattle, but pigs and chickens and goats and small ruminants, they're all animals of prey. They're prey species. So they basically evolved over a very long period of time, avoiding predation, trying to avoid predation. In other words, it doesn't matter how much we work on these cattle, they're just wired to be afraid, and they're wired to be protective of predation. So some of the things that we do to them is always going to be perceived as a danger. You just mentioned when you catch them and you brand and castrate them, they're going to be stressed. And every time they're stressed, weaning, castration, transportation, shipping, arrival in a yard, every time they're stressed, their priority is no longer to grow. Their priority is no longer to stay healthy in the point of view of infectious diseases. Their priority at that point is, I need to survive the immediate danger. In their simple minds, whatever we're doing to them is making them at risk of dying. They're perceiving those things as I've been caught by a predator. And when that happens, there's a bunch of changes that happens in the body of the animal that prioritizes the immediate survival. Those changes will put those animals at risk for infectious diseases, just like bovine respiratory disease and others. And it will also make them less likely to gain weight because their energy resources are going to be reshuffled to other uses other than growth, right? Just think about it. They're trying to survive the attack of the predator. They're trying to survive the immediate threats.
Yep. So the question now is, what was the depth of studies that you had to go through in order to get this approved? As I see here, it's manufactured in the United States. What all had to go through in order to make this product, everybody to sign off and say, okay, this is a good, safe product?
Yep. So a couple things about that. Number one is every ingredient that is used in FerAppease has been scrutinized and approved by the FDA as generally recognized as safe. So every ingredient that goes into making FerAppease is also approved for human consumption. So it has been scrutinized and approved by the FDA as generally recognized as safe. That's number one. Number two, last year alone, we invested nearly $700,000 in clinical trials. This year, we're continuing to do that. We have studies that have been done in universities and in farming operations throughout the country. And our priority is to identify potential users of the product and prove its efficacy by doing independent field studies. I'll give you just one example. There's a study that is currently soon to be published by University of Texas A&M, where we bought the highest risk cattle in the nation. So we brought cattle from Mississippi. These were intact, 400-pound, stripped off their llama cows and sent to a sale barn, put together Mississippi cattle. When they got to College Station, Texas, the researchers divided them into their respective groups. They rested for 12 hours, and then they were processed. They were castrated, they were vaccinated, they were mass treated, dewormed, the whole deal. And then half of them were treated with FerAppease. The other half was not treated with FerAppease. That was just the only difference between treatments and controls. The one interesting thing is we measured the hormone that tells us stress, and that hormone is cortisol. 2 hours after castration, when they're in extreme pain, these cattle were band castrated. They were 400 pounds. We took a blood sample and measured cortisol. The animals that were treated with FerAppease had levels of cortisol that were 40% lower compared to control animals. So less stress, less changes in the immune system. Fast forward, what happened to those animals? They got sick, they got treated, and we had morbidity and mortality data. FerAppease treated cattle recovered better from pneumonia and had a mortality rate overall of 3%. Animals that were not treated with FerAppease had to be retreated more often, so had a rate of retreatment that was 60% higher, and mortality rate for those cattle was 12%. 3% in one group treated with FerAppease, 12% another group not treated with FerAppease. So that's the difference, right? We'll keep those cattle focused on surviving the real threat, which is dying from pneumonia. So when they're afraid of us, they're not preparing themselves or allowing themselves to be prepared to fight bovine respiratory disease. When we take that fear away, we normalize their immune systems and we allow them to fight the disease more efficiently. That's why we see mortality rates going from 12% to 3%. 12% is what we expected in this extremely high-risk cattle. So if you talk to any backgrounder that buys Southeast intact calves and bring them to Texas, you would know that you expect a mortality rate between 10 and 15%. That's why we buy them at a discount price in those regions. FerAppease brought it to a mortality rate that is basically a low-risk cattle mortality rate of 3%. So, the product is incredibly profitable because you're basically saving animals and decreasing disease. And all we're doing is decreasing stress. Everything is a consequence.
Well, let's take a break here, and when we come back, we're going to continue on. We're looking at the product FerAppease today. My guest is founder and developer of the product, Dr. Rodrigo Bacayo, DVM. And when we come back, we're going to get into some of the other details, things like what's the dosage, what's the cost, also is there withdrawal or not a withdrawal because of the type of product that it is. Those are some of the questions we'll get into when we come back here on the Working Ranch Radio Show. Welcome back to the Working Ranch Radio Show as we are looking at the product called FerAppease. It's a maternal bovine appeasing substance. In the first segment there, you heard our guest today, Dr. Rodrigo Bacayo, DVM, who is founder and developer of the product FerAppease, talk what that all meant and how it's used. Before we start jumping into dosage and the cost per dose, Dr. Rodrigo, let's look at the conversation of withdrawal. Now, you had mentioned that it is a pheromone, so I'm assuming and I'm guessing then that really there isn't an issue with withdrawal periods for any livestock that it's used. Is that correct?
Correct. No withdrawal, not a hormone, not an antibiotic, not a vaccine. It's basically a combination of specific fatty acids that create that analog of the maternal appeasing substance. It is GAP approved as an all-natural treatment. It's NHTC approved as well. We could get organic certification. We just haven't, it's such a small market for us. If anybody listening to this wants us to contact their whatever and try to help to get that organic certification, it's just not a priority.
Yeah.
So actually one of the applications of the product that is very commonly done is treating animals before they're sent to the packing plant. So they're 0 weeks old, and we know that we actually decrease cortisol levels on terminal samples of blood collected at the packing plant by 50%. So those animals go through the process of being slaughtered with a reduced stress of 50. And that's, to me, just the welfare of those animals alone justifies the use of the product at that instance, that moment.
Mm-hmm. Okay, a couple more questions. Real quick, species. We've been talking a lot about cattle, but I think there's some other species. Is that correct?
That's right. I mean, we focus our research. We have 2 products. We have a product for cattle and a product for swine. So we use the cattle product to research cattle. We use the swine product to study swine. Now, that doesn't stop people from using our product and giving us feedback. So I can tell you that the cattle product has been used in bison, in small ruminants, goats, and sheep. It has been used in wildlife like white-tailed deer, and the feedback that we get is stellar. We had our sales meeting last week, and we had a chance to exchange experiences and brought our salespeople from all over the country. And one sales guy said, well, I have a client that has an elephant that has to be transported, and she pours a whole bottle of FerAppease on the head of the elephant every time that the elephant gets into a truck. I got a phone call from a huge wildlife preserve. They're breeding kudus and African species of animals, wildlife in Africa, in Texas. It's one of the largest outfit of wildlife breeders in Texas. And they've been using FerAppease and are incredibly surprised and pleasantly surprised with how the animals are much calmer and all of that. So yes, there is application for other species. It's not our priority. We're probably not going to do research right now on those other species, but I can tell you there's a lot of use and a lot of interest, and the feedback that we have gotten from them is all positive.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So then let's get to the final question here, and let's talk about dosage rates and that cost per dose. I know there's some weight increments that tell you how much you're going to give. Let's talk about the dosage rate and the cost.
Good. Dosage rate. Basically, everything that you're going to treat on the beef industry is going to get a 10 ml dose. So if you are weaning your calves, even if you're weaning your calf on diesel fumes, it's stripping and shipping, you're going to gain from treating them with FerAppease. That's going to be 10 mLs. We put 5 mLs right above the nose, 5 mLs behind the pole, right? 10 mLs. If you are interested in treating, the only category of animal that is going to receive a smaller dose is your spring processing calves, your branding calves in the spring. So if your calves are less than 200 pounds, if you're going to be branding and castrating your calves in the spring, we have solid data demonstrating that FerAppease not only decreases the stress of castration and branding, but also aids in weight gain and pain mitigation. Those calves can be treated with a simple 5 ml total dose, 2.5 ml above the nose, 2.5 mLs behind the pole. For the full dose, the 10 mLs, it retails for around $3 a dose.
Okay.
So if you're going to wean your calves, $3 a dose, it's going to reduce your morbidity, improve weight gain, decrease mortality, $3. If you're going to treat your spring calves, because you're going to provide them with more comfort and decrease stress, that's $1.50. And then all the way to heifers and cows, there are people using it before they breed their put animals on time they die. The other common use is treating bulls when you take them out of the cows and bring them together to prevent fighting and stress fighting. And treating bulls, people use 15 mLs, but something like that. So the dose is almost always 10 mLs. The bulls, I would use 15 mLs. The baby calves that you're branding and castrating, they're less than 200 pounds. You can use a 5 ml dose.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, that's a lot of information there. Now, where do they get it? How do they find out more? If they got more information about the product, I know there's they can go to the website. If you search FerAppease beef, or you can find their website, FerAppease.com. But where do they pick the product up at?
Yep. So the product is widely available. You can, we have distributors and resellers throughout the country. So I would reach out to your local distributor, your local reseller, your local veterinarian. We have a very strong, good partnership with veterinarians throughout the country. So I would reach out, even though it's an over-the-counter product, it might be easier for you just to talk to your vet. He might be already carrying it. And if he's not, he can start. If you can't find the product in any one of these places, you will find it on our website. So you go to FerAppease.com. If you Google FerAppease, you're going to find a website. You can buy it from our website. You're going to have to pay shipping. The price is going to be the same. So I encourage you to talk to your local reseller, your local veterinarian. You're going to find it locally for the same price.
All right. Well, Dr. Rodrigo, appreciate the information. I know this is appealing to a lot of folks to think about. And as we said earlier, this is not a substitute for poor cattle handling. This is just a method in addition to what you do. And we continue to stress the idea that we all need to be better cattle handlers. But at the same time, as we had mentioned a bit ago, anytime we work animals, there's a cortisone level that comes up in these animals as it addresses that. Appreciate the information on the product FerAppease and joining us here today on the Working Ranch Radio Show.
I appreciate the opportunity, Justin. Thank you so much. And you guys can, if you have any question, the listeners, you can reach out to us directly. And again, thanks for the opportunity. Have a great day.
You bet. And again, that was Dr. Rodrigo Bacayo, DVM, founder and developer of the product FerAppease. That is spelled FerAppease. And if you just search FerAppease on the internet or go to FerAppease.com, you will find more information. Do your research on it. And as I said at the beginning of the program, by no means are we endorsing any of these products here today, just informational purposes. We're not getting any side kick on any of this that we do. I have questions, thought it'd be useful to share this conversation with you as well. Stay with us. When we come back, the Captain Tim O'Byrne will be in with this week's edition of Tim's 2 Cents and meteorologist Don Day with a look at our long-term weather. We'll be back after this.
Looking for the perfect gift for a gardener or weather enthusiast? Introducing the Tropo, a precision rain gauge that has revolutionized both reliability and convenience. Expertly engineered by meteorologists, the Tropo gauge boasts rugged durability, impeccable accuracy, and precision to the 100th of an inch. Visit measurerain.com to order a Tropo today and use code RAINDAY. That's RAINDAY for free shipping and 10% off. Go to measurerain.com.
Hey, Justin. Hey, everybody out there in Working Ranch Radio Land. I've been thinking about this rural large animal vet shortage that we've been dealing with for the last several years. It doesn't appear to be getting any better. I wonder if there's any way, or maybe folks are thinking about it at the AVMA, where we can kind of distill that 7-year test of endurance to become a veterinarian and kind of bring it down to maybe 3 years of large animal, food only type vets. So just basically your cow vet that can do some equine stuff, but refer the major equine cases to an equine vet. And just maybe the county or some companies or whatever can underwrite some of these young vets that would want to come out to the rural areas and take over and just help us out with the cows and keep us going and be there and encourage others to do the same thing. Make it easy on them. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. Back to you in the booth.
All right, thanks, Captain. And yeah, if you're listening out there, maybe you're a rancher and you have some thoughts or comments on that. Maybe you're a vet and you have an opinion on it as well. Shoot us an email. My email address is justin.workingranch@gmail.com. Well, meteorologist Don Day is standing by as we take a look at our long-term weather. And Don, as we are looking out into that 10 and 15-day look, the numbers, when we look at specifically, you guys are really watching those Pacific oscillation numbers, and when things things dip below into the negative territory, showing that we're still going to continue to see some moisture. But one of the things you're concerned about is the moisture that we are going to get across portions of the northwestern half of the country, still kind of excluding some of these areas that are in need of moisture.
Yeah, it's one of these situations where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, which is very frustrating for folks who are seeing an active weather pattern. You know, we're talking about a lot of activity, and there's going to be coming across the North Pacific into the western U.S. And this type of pattern is going to keep it moist along the West Coast, the Pacific Northwest, the Great Basin, the Central and Northern Rockies. And then it's going to be quite wet for the Northern Plains, a lot of the Corn Belt, as these systems come on through. But there's an area where we're just seeing these storms not track just right, that's missing out on the better rain chances. And I believe we mentioned this last week, is that Interstate 70 corridor across eastern Colorado, across Kansas, then along and south of that interstate. They have just not been able to benefit from this more active weather pattern, while areas to the north have. And for at least another week, Justin, I think that's how it's going to go. Those central and northern areas are going to be quite wet. Corn Belt's going to be quite wet, the Northern Plains. Now, there is going to be a little bit of shower and thunderstorm activity along that I-70 corridor, but they need more.
Yeah.
But they're not going to do nearly as well.
So when you look about, as we were talking a bit ago about that 15, maybe 20-day mark out, anything changing in that, or is it still that pattern? I know we're in that spring pattern that's fairly typical, but at the same time, as we look further out into the latter part of May, anything changing with the weather look across the country?
No, one thing we can talk about is that I think the basic pattern we're in now is going to hold. So where you are or where you've been over the last week or so, I think is where you're going to be, generally speaking, between now and the third week of May, which takes us right up to that Memorial Day weekend time frame. We don't see, we did have some pretty chilly weather a weekend ago across a lot of the U.S. It got pretty cold. The way the pattern is setting up, I don't see that in a real significant cold coming in, because you always get concerned about a late season frost or freeze, and we're not out of the woods with that yet. But I think we're going to go well into the first 2 weeks of May without any real significant cold outbreak. I think a lot of the U.S., a lot of the lower 48 will be looking at some decent temperatures. If there's going to be some cooler than average temperatures, it's going to be in the far west, but that does not necessarily mean a late season freeze in those areas. The central and eastern parts of the United States are going to see temperatures warm up about as they should as we get deeper into spring.
All right. Well, Don, appreciate the update here, and we'll kind of keep hoping that some things will happen for those folks down in that Kansas I-70 corridor area and south of there, as they're definitely not looking forward to another year of a dry condition.
No, and they were dry for 3 years. They had a super wet year last year. Last thing you want to do is go back to dry again after one good year. So we'll see what we can do to make these storms just go a little more south.
You bet. All right, Don, thanks for joining us.
See you then.
You bet. And again, that is meteorologist Don Day with a look at our long-term weather. If you want to tune in each and every morning to his daily video podcast, you can find that by going to his website at dayweather.com. Stick around. We'll put a wrap on this week's program when we return on the Working Ranch Radio Show. Hey, well, I know our show is just a little bit different than we normally do, but, I kind of enjoyed it. It was educational for me, and I hope it was for you as well. By the way, if you liked it, let us know in the comments or in the ratings as well. We would appreciate that. Or you can send me an email at justin.workingranch@gmail.com. And hey, if there's some other products out there you have questions about, we can maybe do this with them as well. Well, the Working Ranch Radio Show is a production of Working Ranch Magazine, branded #1 by America's Ranchers. If you want to get your subscription started and catch that next summer issue that's going to be coming out soon, you can go to workingranchmag.com and get it started there today. Thanks for joining us this week. I'm your host, Justin Mills, and until next time, keep your chin down and your mind in the middle. So long.